Hello, my name is Hunter, the movie reviewing pony, because when it comes to cinema, humans cannot be trusted. And welcome to another rendition of the aptly named Good or Bad, the review where I take the latest movies to hit the box office and critique them. Equestria, girls. Oh boy, we all remember that one. In all fairness, I did give it a decent review score at around a 7.5 or an 8. Honestly, I don't know what to rate the first movie because it really wasn't that good, but it really wasn't that bad either. Once you get past the whole concept of horses turning into people, it's actually a pretty decent film. Needless to say, it had its flaws, but still, people enjoyed it, I enjoyed it, it was a decent film. The music's great, the animation is great, the characters are what we've come to know and love, and it made a pretty decent profit, so Hasbro and the higher-ups will be able to release their new line of dolls. Don't shy away from that, Hasbro, I know what's going on. When it comes to a franchise being toyetic, My Little Pony is a gold mine. So yeah, I know what's going on. But it was a good film nonetheless. But as is usually the case with Hollywood, they wanted a sequel, they did not require a sequel, but you all asked me to review this movie! So, Rainbow Rocks, good or bad? I'm gonna be brutally honest, when I saw this poster, I braced myself for the worst. Also, I had to brace my wallet for the 20 bits that I had to dish out for a train ticket to Canterlot because that was the only place it was playing, then another 10 bits for the actual movie, then another 20 bits to get back to Ponyville. Stop it with the limited theatrical releases, guys! But enough about my financial problems. Trailers for this can't even be classified as bad. They're more misleading. Half of the scenes that we saw in the initial trailer, and I mean the very first trailer, didn't even appear in the actual movie. And also, it's worth noting that this is the second time that the first trailer gives a horrible impression of the movie and what we're to expect. Seriously, what is it with Hasbro and making these horrible trailers? Then you got the actual trailers, and what do you know, we actually had scenes from the movie. So what happened to all of the scenes from the first trailer? I don't know, maybe I'm being nitpicky, they might just appear in the deleted scenes, but I don't know, it just strikes a wrong note with me. Actually, is it just me, or is Hasbro really bad at advertising? I mean, look at this poster, for example, it's a clusterfuck to the eyes. And who's that? Is that vinyl? Is that supposed to be vinyl? I can't really tell. I mean, it looks like vinyl, but she's sort of a background character. She has no lines in this movie, and she only comes in at the end of the film. Was a background character really worth putting on the poster of your movie? I mean, she's barely in the film. And also, the fact that they're trying to expand this leg of their franchise just seems silly to me. The whole concept of it is weird. I mean, it honestly seems like someone was smoking something over at Hasbro Studios when they thought this whole concept up. So, was there skepticism behind this movie? Oh, you better believe it! The advertising campaign for this was a mess! I was expecting something horrible! So, I guess it just comes down to good or bad. Well, put your torches and pitchforks away, folks, cause it's not bad. Before going into this movie, I actually checked the review scores. And to my surprise, the review scores were high. I'm talking 8.4 out of 10 on IMDb. That's pretty high for IMDb. But now that I've actually seen the movie, I can safely say that maybe they're actually justified. This movie isn't of overwhelming praise, but it is of praise nonetheless. Once again, the animation is great, it's got a nice smooth frame rate, the music has somehow become better, despite the fact that it was already very good in the first movie. And once again, the characters are what we've come to expect. For a movie purely meant to promote a bunch of toys, not bad, Hasbro. In more ways than one, they actually did seem to top the last movie. For example, in the first movie, they just sort of pulled a Deus Ex Machina out of nowhere to defeat the main enemy. Honestly, it just seemed like something that they made up on the spot because they couldn't think of a way to defeat the villain. In this movie, a plan is actually set in motion that makes sense, and they follow through with it. This makes the movie a little bit predictable, but at least you get the feeling that they're not making this crap up as they go on. Which is unfortunately what the first movie seemed to have going for it. So story-wise, I guess this film is pretty okay. Another thing that I have to praise this movie for is the pacing. The first Equestrian Girls movie seemed to follow the same formula as its show counterpart. As we all know, each episode of Friendship is Magic has to fill a time slot of 22 minutes. In the first movie, they pushed expositions aside like they were trying to work within that time slot. As a result, the whole film just seemed a bit rushed. And also, certain plot points were never even focused on at all. For example, the love relationship between Twilight and Flash Sentry. Which, by the way, is barely focused on at all in this movie as well. But back to pacing. This movie actually did seem to slow down quite a bit. It didn't feel like an episode. It actually did feel like a movie. At times, it actually does seem to drag, but the pacing was actually pretty good with this movie. One major flaw with this movie that I found was the villains. They had a goal to accomplish in this movie, but there was no real conflict or long-term goal. Are they gonna go back to Equestria and take over? Are they gonna take over this world? Are they just doing it for the fame? It was never really explained. Their ultimate plan was never revealed, which left me guessing whether or not they really had a plan to begin with. The concept behind what they are is cool, but nonetheless, they never really had a long-term plan. When it comes to villains, people want to know what's going on, and they didn't manage to accomplish that in this movie. You can't just throw a villain in your movie and be like, they're evil, they must be defeated. They don't have a plan, though. I mean, a cool concept of what they are isn't enough for them to be good villains. Also, another major plot hole I found with this was the time in between scenes. Now, there's only one in particular that I have a problem with, and that's the transition between the first scene and the rest of the movie. For example, the first scene clearly takes place at the end of the first movie, but given the events that happen in the film, the rest of the movie clearly takes place after Season 4. Whereas the first movie happened after Season 3. It's never really explained what they were doing all that time, nor is it ever explained how much time has actually passed. And how many of you actually remember this video? Pretty much everyone has watched it. Everyone could probably tell that Vinyl Scratch was a major part of the advertising campaign. So why was she only brought in at the end of the movie? I mean, I get that she's a background character and everything, but still, put her in a few more scenes throughout the movie. Honestly, it's kind of false advertising. But then again, the advertising campaign for this movie was a mess, as I stated before. But one thing I did like about this movie was that Sunset Shimmer was actually a major character in the film. She wasn't forced on the audience too heavily either. She actually did feel like she belonged as one of the main characters in the cast. Greg, they didn't ask you to review the movie, they asked me to review the movie. And needless to say, the music in this film is actually pretty awesome. I mean, we knew right from the get-go that the movie was going to have a very big music theme to it. And when it comes to Hasbro, there are very mixed opinions when it comes to the music that they do. But the songs in this movie were actually pretty good. In fact, I wouldn't mind having a few of these on my iPod. And that's saying something. So needless to say, this film works. I mean, it works well. Sure, the advertising for it was a mess, but when you get down to the film itself, it actually works pretty good. It has its flaws, but then again, most movies do. So, what's my final verdict on the movie? 8.7. This is a good movie. It's not as good as what's coming out lately, but it's still a good movie. Anyone in the Brony fandom will enjoy this film. I'd actually go as far as to say this film is better than the original Equestria Girls by a landslide. Once you get past the concept again, there's actually a pretty decent movie to be found here. And given that most of us probably expected way worse, this was a pleasant surprise. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's gonna be able to compete with the bigger movies that are coming out this year and early next year, but nonetheless, it was still okay. And given that Hasbro has been doing everything in their power to market the hell out of this franchise, they did their best. And I gotta respect them for that. And they also didn't shy away from Derpy, which I also respect them for. Just watch the movie to figure out what I'm talking about with that. And should you check out this movie? Yes. If you have kids of your own or you're in the Brony fandom, you would absolutely enjoy this film. My name is Hunter, and this has been a Hunter Review.